Hello everyone, I'm Rak Patel. I'm Head of Sales for the UK and Panamia at Spotify. Hopefully you were enjoying the tunes we were just playing there. It's great to have so many of you with us today, and welcome. Welcome to our second session in the loveAudio series, AudioPowered Creativity. Now we have got a fantastic playlist installed for all of you, and I'll come on to that in a few moments. And it's great to have, as I've said, so many of you on the call. We have folk from the UK, from the Netherlands, and across our partner sales markets across EMEA. So thank you so much for taking the time out. I know you all have very, very busy schedules. Now, before I get to that playlist, I do want to run through a couple of things, and these are our house rules and some technical information. Firstly, we are obviously on a wonderful Zoom call. For those of you that were on the first session, you can see I've really sorted my hair out, which is a good thing for me. But please don't worry about being seen or being heard on this call. We have a wonderful backroom team who are wrapping themselves around this session right now, and will make sure that none of that will happen. We also want to make this as interactive as possible. I really do recognize that you go from back-to-back Zoom calls throughout your day, so we will make this very interactive. At the bottom of your Zoom screen, you can see the Q&A functionality, so please do ask your questions as we go through, and we will absolutely leave you time at the end, or I will leave time at the end to answer as many of those questions as I possibly can. Now, if we're doing interactivity, of course, we are going to have polls. We all love a good poll. So if the team behind can pull up the first poll for all of you to get interactive to start off with, in which audio creative guidelines are you most interested? The fun or functional? This is the first question of the day to you. And that is, let me ask that question again. In which audio creative guidelines are you most interested? Is it the fun or is it the functional? Let's give you another 10 seconds or so to answer away. Thankfully, no questions this time about my hair. This is a much better type of question, team, that we should be asking this wonderful audience. So let's have a look at the answer. What have we got? Wow, right, so you want a combination of both. So 3/4 of the audience want to know about fun and functional. It's almost like we planted that, but that is great because, you know, we are going to absolutely cover both from a fun and functional perspective. So let's close down the poll and let's start by having a look at what the playlist is for today. What are we going to cover over the space of the next hour? And we're going to break this down into a couple of different areas. So firstly, just before I get into that, you know, this series is very much to offer you inspiration and to really illustrate the power of audio. And what we're going to focus on today is how, you know, streaming intelligence in particular, that's the insights we can offer, really can help your creativity, and the team can really support you on that. So we'll break that down into a couple of different areas. I'm going to delve a little bit into our streaming intelligence. Now, as I've just touched on, streaming intelligence is our data and our insight, and it really is the lifeblood of our business at Spotify, whether that's the products that we curate all the way through, as we're going to touch on, how we can support you as brand owners and guardians. Then I'm delighted to introduce you to Riccardo Motti. Riccardo, I mean, he's the star of the show. He really is. He is our head of creative solutions across EMEA, and he's going to delve into a couple of different things. Firstly, he's going to talk to you about not best practice, but next practice. What are the things that you as marketeers should really be thinking about in terms of some of the great things that have happened on our platform, but things we'd also like to really talk to you about in terms of usage of audio on Spotify. And he's going to leave you with some practical steps and tangible things you can do wherever you are on your journey when it comes to your audio prowess. You know, whether you're starting off and you're a brand that's really looking for inspiration, or you're a brand that's already very accomplished within the audio space, we are going to talk you through, and Rick's going to talk you through various sort of tangible steps that you can take. And as I said, I absolutely am going to leave time at the end for a Q&A. I jumped forward a little bit there, didn't I? So let's start with this. Now, I've already said we're going to do interactivity. You know about the Q&A. You know about polls. What about this? Why don't we show you what we are seeing from a streaming intelligence perspective in terms of you as the audience today and what we know about your audience. So let's start this. So if you could all get your phone out and get to the camera and please use your camera to scan this QR code. And once you've done that, I'm going to give you a little bit of time. So yeah, let me start that instruction again. Get your phone out, get your camera open, scan this QR code, and then you will have a whole raft of different questions that will start to be asked. Not too many. Please don't worry. This is fully GDPR compliant. And what you are doing is actually giving us insight into your streaming intelligence, how you use the Spotify app. So come on, let's get this really going. We have a lot of people on the calls, and I can see already we are shooting up in terms of the number of users that have a number of you in the audience that have given us this information. Again, what we are about to do is really delve into all of yours at aggregated level. Of course, as I said, it's GDPR compliant. We are going to really see what the streaming intelligence, what are the streaming habits we have of today's audience. Okay, so we are still racking up the numbers here, and I'll give it another 30 seconds or so before we move to actually looking at some of these results. And I really do hope you find this incredibly fascinating. I know I am. Right, let's give it another 10 seconds or so, and then we are going to move on. I mean, I know you must be sat at the edge of your seat right now thinking, oh my word, I'm with all these wonderful people on this call right now, and they're going to tell me what my streaming habits are. Right, okay, let's go. Let's have a look at some of these results. Let's move on. So let's have a look at the first slide. I went a little forward there. The top artist amongst all of you on this call right now, and God, aren't you a group of very cool kids? It's The Weeknd. So number one, we have The Weeknd, as you can see here, followed by Dua Lipa. Then we have Billie Eilish, a lot of Billie Eilish fans out there too, Drake and Justin Bieber. So, you know, really, I feel very excited to be with such cool folk in terms of, you know, what you're actually listening to right now. So these are the top artists from everyone that is on this call that have obviously gone in and given us access to their streaming intelligence. Okay, what about top tracks? Blinding Lights, of course it is. Of course it is. It's Blinding Lights by The Weeknd. Oh, we just had a bit of movement there, actually. And now into number two, we have Dua Lipa with Don't Start Now. Don't worry, I'm not going to break out into song. Followed by Bad Guy from Billie Eilish, and then Blinding Lights again, twice. Oh, we have it twice there. Interesting. And Don't Start Now by Dua Lipa as well. Okay. What about the top genres? Well, you are big fans of pop there at 21%, 13% rap. Oh gosh, it's moving in real time. Look how real time this is. And just to give you an idea on the robustness of this data, we have over 400 people of you on the call right now who've given us access to their streaming intelligence. So at 13% rap, 10% indie, 8% rock, 9% indie rock. And what is a bit of a travesty from my perspective is I'm a house music lover, and we don't have any electronic dance music in there at all. So thank God I didn't give you that data. And then finally, look, let's go into a little bit, and you know, we're having a bit of fun here, right? But let's go into a little bit of detail here. What we see here is that the average number of playlists for all of you is at 90. So 90 playlists, the average average number of playlists you have on the platform. And I could tell this already. 48% of you are happy people. And this is happy music that you're listening to. And that actually is a bit higher than what we've been seeing on the platform over the space of the last few months, as you could probably imagine as well. You're all dancers, although there was no house music in there, but that's okay. I'll take that. 62% of you are dancers. This is the average number or average share of danceable music in your across this group. This is good. A good one here. 17% politically incorrect, as in 17% of this audience are okay with explicit lyrics. The rest of you are not. So, you know, very mature group here. The average number of followers you have, and this is a good number, you have 40 fans each, which is a great number. And, you know, I'm sure those fans that follow you will be those that are proper super fans of you, as they rightly should be. And 51%, and this came out a little bit in terms of, you know, what the top genres and artists that you were listening to, 51% of you are mainstreamers, and that's good, right? That is good. 49% are obviously more into the niche, but 51% of you are mainstreamers. Now, yes, this has been a bit of fun, but I do really hope that you take from this the sort of insights and data we have at our fingertips that can really help you as brand marketers and brand guardians. So let's get back into the main presentation, and we will carry on. So I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you everyone for giving us access to your streaming intelligence. And again, like I said, it really gives you a really good view into what we have at our fingertips. Okay, so moving on, I do want to touch on, before we get to Rick, some of the streaming intelligence we've actually been seeing not just over the last few months, but over the last few years. And what you see here is that there has been a steady increase in streaming audio on our platform over the last couple of years, at just under 13% in the UK. And that is a figure that's very similar in both the Netherlands and Poland. They're both at around 13% growth over the last couple of years. But in the lead from all of the markets that have dialed in today is Belgium, which has actually seen an increase of 67.5% over the last few years. Now, I'm not going to touch too much on what we've seen over the last 3 months, because that was obviously the first session, the first loveAudio session that we did. But this is data that's taken from our last Q1 earnings, and this is the total number of fans we have on the platform across the globe at 286 million. And the interesting point here is the growth that we've seen over the last few months, over the time that we've been in COVID. And that increase has been across the globe at 32% for the ad-supported users that we have on the platform. So in effect, we've actually seen an increase in streaming audio on our platform over the last few months, and we've seen some really fascinating behavioral shifts over that time. As you could probably imagine, commute playlists and also playlists in car that are being played in car have dropped, but we've seen a massive increase in a whole raft of different genres, and I'm going to take you through a couple of those right now. Firstly, in the home. So there's been 1,000% increase in the number of playlists that have been specifically curated for homeschooling. At over 1,000%. And for those of you that have been having to homeschool any of your kids or your guardians or parents, you will know absolutely keeping your children, whoever you're looking after, entertained is massively important. Whilst we've been at home, we've been cooking more, for sure. And on our platform, what we've seen is an increase of 120% of baking playlists. Now, I know this. I'm very familiar with this. I have 4 children. And so in our house, the amount of flour that has been used over the space of the last couple of months has been crazy. And I know they've all been curating their own baking playlists on the platform. But you can see this. This is across, from April to May this year. And you can see the increase that we've seen on the platform. What about working from home? So working from home playlist has seen a massive increase, 1,400% over the last few months or so. And I know, and as you can see on the right hand side there, the top songs that have been streamed as well. And I know the UK team, who are all dialed in right now, 9 to 5 by Dolly Parton is their favorite for sure as well. But, we're obviously talking a lot about being at home. The last few months have been, traumatic. They've been difficult. They've been hard for us all. And we've seen that in terms of the increase in the chill, the type of music on our platform that has a lower BPM. And even for me, that's happened. And again, many of you might know this, many of you might not know this, but I do love the deep progressive house. And I've had to actually move to a bit more towards poolside disco and also more of the tropical house. But on the platform, a 23% increase we've seen of chill music being listened to. So, these are all data points, all streaming intelligence that we can see on our platform. So let's get our second poll up and ask you, what does audio offer you when you're streaming? What does audio offer you when you're streaming? The answers are, is it an escape? Is it a plug into culture? Is it nostalgia? Is it a personalized experience? So the question, we'll give it a few seconds. What does audio offer you when you're streaming? Is it an escape? Is it a plug into culture? Is it nostalgia? Or is it a personalized experience? I told you it's going to be interactive today. But here we go. Right. Let's have a look at the answers to that. Wow, right. Okay. So pretty much neck and neck. It offers you a personalized experience. And absolutely, we talk about this a lot. We talk about, Spotify being a real companion to our fans or to our users. And, really because of the way our platform operates and because of that streaming intelligence, we try and make the experience as personalized for you as we possibly can. But not far from that is an escape. Audio offers you an escape. And we'll touch on that a little bit actually, and we did talk about this quite a bit in the first loveAudio series, where audio is that companion, and I'm gonna come back to that, and particularly when we have so much visual stimuli pretty much 24 hours a day, audio can be that escape for you as well. Now, what's interesting here, in last place, we had nostalgia at 6%. Now, one thing, and again, do talk to your Spotify team, nostalgia, we've seen actually a massive increase over the time we've been in COVID, of over 54% increase in the nostalgia playlist listening on our platform. And really because, people are obviously wanting to go back to a time that was a lot more happier for them. Right, so let's pull down that poll. I'm going to be pretty much done in a moment or two, and I'm going to be passing over to Rick. But before I do that, I do want to sort of finish on, audio being this companion, being there for you, and being there for you through all of these moments. These moments are critical, and I know as marketeers, but these moments are important to you in terms of when you want to absolutely be engaging with the audiences that are going to be critical to you and your business. I've touched on cooking, I've touched on chill, I've touched on the working from home environment, but also think about family, think about gaming. Gaming is huge and has seen a massive spike as well as we've all been at home. And of course, working out, and working out has really stayed very consistent as a top genre, as a top set of playlists that people really lean into. Now, I've touched on streaming intelligence, over the space of the last few minutes or so. We've done a live, real-time, and it worked, thank gosh, view for you and visualization for you in terms of how streaming intelligence really appears to us at Spotify. But this streaming intelligence becomes really critical when it comes to creativity, because it is these insights that are going to really power your creativity, your idea, working with us to really get, a very impactful experience on the platform that really engages with your audience. So I'm delighted to introduce to you, as I've already said, the real star of the show at Spotify, and that is Ricardo Motti, who's head of creative solutions across EMEA. Rick, hello.
Hello, Rack. Thanks for all the little hearts that you added to this deck. It looks
well. Not only you are the star of the show, you get lilac hearts. Now I'm going to have to talk to the production team. I get no hearts. But before you jump in, can you tell everyone that's dialed in today what you do at Spotify and a little bit about your history as well, please?
Yeah, of course. So I started my career working at creative agencies. So working as a creative director, first in Brazil and then in the UK recently. And then I moved on to Spotify just under a year ago to lead the creative solutions team for EMEA. The job of the creative solutions team is basically to work with brands to explain to them what are the best ways of using Spotify as a platform to reach our audience and also to inspire them. So today, what we're doing today is pretty much my job.
Over to you.
Okay, so hello everyone. It's great to be here talking to the Weekend Fan Club. I'm excited to present some things. All right, there we go to the screen sharing. This is my first quote to start. I love this quote. It's a quote from Luke Sullivan, who wrote this book called Hey Whipple, Squeeze This to young advertising creatives. And the quote says, in audio, the canvas is large, stretching off in every direction. Audio lets you do impossible things way too expensive to make into TV commercials. So if you think about, like, if you're trying to create an ad that depicts a Wild West train robbery, if you're going to shoot that, that's a lot of shooting, it's a lot of time, it's a lot of money. But if you're using audio, you can create the sound of the train going past, the sound of the horses, the sound of the shooting, and you can do that very quickly and in a non-expensive manner. Or if it's a football ad and you want to put the listener inside the World Cup final, it's very easy to do that with audio. You have the sound of the crowd, the sound of the players hitting the ball and the shouting and the referee's whistle. So all this happens very easily with audio. But when Luke Sullivan wrote this book, I think this book is almost 30 years old, he was talking about radio. And radio has a lot of limitations that we don't have nowadays. So if we move on to the next slides, let me try to do this. Now I have control of the presentation. All right, this is going to work now. Perfect, I knew it was going to work. So we say the creative potential of audio is booming like never before. Radio had some limitations and we have some innovation on Spotify that we didn't have before. So first of all, we talk a lot about streaming intelligence. It's one thing to talk to someone about the World Cup final, and it's another thing to talk to someone who's a super football fan about the World Cup final. And we have this almost 300 million users as we're talking about, but what we say is that we have this one-on-one relationship with each of these users. We know what kind of music they like, we know some of their interests, so it makes it a lot easier to talk to them very precisely. Another thing that we know is that 85% of people listen to Spotify using headphones. And that creates a lot of new possibilities. So it's one thing to recreate that Wild West train robbery in radio and the sound's coming from just one single source. But if you're playing around with your headphones and you can hear maybe the shooting comes from the left ear, the train comes from the right ear, and you feel like you're mounting on your horse, then it's a very immersive surround experience. So before we get started with the meaty part of the presentation, I'm going to call our first poll of my part, just to know how familiar you all are with audio. So the options are, I'm very familiar, I've done loads of audio, so that's great. I did a little bit, but nothing too adventurous. I know a little, but haven't tried it yet, or I'm totally new to audio. So I'm give just a little more time, maybe 5 seconds, while you figure out what is the best answer for you. I'll stop talking so you can think. And now we can see the results. Let's see how you all did. Okay, so almost 20% of people are very familiar, have done loads. So that's exciting. Some, like a quarter did a little bit, but nothing too adventurous. And a little bit of people, 30%, like the best answer is know a little, haven't tried it yet. And 25% are totally new to this. One thing that we always say is that if you work in marketing, if you work in advertising, it's very difficult to be totally new to audio. If you did a TV shoot, for example, if you did a TVC, you probably know a little bit of how to work with audio. Old school creative directors used to say that music and sound is half of a TV ad, and I totally agree. So you probably know a little bit about the impact that music can have and then sound can have in an ad, and now it's just a matter of translating or transcreating that to audio. So we can close this poll now, and then I'm gonna tell you about one project that we did recently for Adidas. I'm gonna play this video, but before I play it, I will just explain a little bit. This was a project done for Adidas in Germany and in the US, and it's to promote this beautiful training running shoes that they have that changes colors at night. And one thing we did realize looking at the streaming intelligence is that the music taste, that the way people listen to music changes during the day to the night. So now I'm gonna play and then you probably get the idea.
When the sun goes down, who do you become? Spotify listeners around the world come alive at night. From 6 p.m. to 6 a.m., users are more likely to switch up genres, tempos, and moods. Runners need to adjust to the dark too. That's why Adidas created the Night Jogger, a retro-inspired running shoe with reflective detailing. By day, it's one look. By night, it's another. Taking a nod from the Night Jogger, we teamed up with Adidas to show listeners in Germany and the US exactly how their soundtrack moves from day to night. Fitness enthusiasts were invited to a custom Adidas microsite with a built-in Spotify integration, revealing how music fans soundtrack their nights in the world's most creative capitals. We then invited them to check out their own night score, a personalized breakdown of each individual's nighttime listening trends. From there, listeners could explore their nocturnal side, including the genres, artists, and beats that get the most plays after dark, along with other signals like energy, tempo, and mood that define their nighttime vibe, finishing with a playlist of tracks they play most from dusk to dawn. So how did Night Score score? A good question. Overall, the experience delivered 32.4 million impressions with over 9 million unique users reached, helping Adidas drive hype and bring the night jogger to a new generation of listeners who never hit pause, because the difference in their soundtrack is literally day and night. By AM, you're one thing. By PM, find out who you become.
All right. So this was a super exciting project done by the German and US team in collaboration. And you can see how when you use the live streaming intelligence and you understand how people listen, you can create some exciting new ideas on how to advertise a product. Now, as Rak mentioned, I'm going to talk a little bit about next practices. We have this little logo that you can see on the right that says best and next practices. We're not a huge fan of talking to you about best practice and being really prescriptive about what you can and cannot do on the platform. We're not going to tell you, hey, put your message in the first 3 seconds or use subtitles or something like that. We're here to talk about the next practices. Because we're in the very beginning of the audio advertising journey, and that's my strong opinion, we're still learning and we're still constructing with you what is possible. A lot of things that are done nowadays, today, were not done even 5 years ago. And that's why we're here to create this next practice. So I'll talk a little bit about some inspiration of what we can do, and I'll try to be as fun and functional as you all want. And then in the end, I'm gonna give you some more tactical, precise tips if you're just starting in audio. So my first slide is talking about 3D audio that we mentioned a little bit before. So because 85% of the audience listens on headphones, you have the chance to be really immersive and use surround sound to create some sort of ambience. And that provokes a really strong emotional response. This campaign we did for BBC to launch their 7 Words, 1 Planet nature documentary series. It was a series done where they had 7 episodes and each episode was about one continent. So they have the Asia, Africa, Americas, Antarctica, and so on. It was very hard to convey a very visual thing like a nature documentary using audio. So what we did is we created 7 audio spots that capture the experience of those continents. I'm going to play to you now the Asia audio spot. Here we go.
Asia. 7 Worlds, 1 Planet continues Sunday on BBC One and BBC iPlayer. Click now to experience more.
That was our special guest, Sir Richard Attenborough, who ran this documentary. One thing that I should have said is that if you were listening to this on headphones, you probably did not get the full 3D experience because Zoom compresses audio and doesn't make it sound as great as it does on the Spotify platform. But we are going to send you the files later so you can see how it felt. But it's just a great example. It was so fun working with the BBC to get those audio files and then reconstructing the experience of the continent in one 30-second audio spot. We're going to talk a little bit more about 3D audio in a little bit. But another thing that's interesting about this spot is then another advice we have is let your brand speak. So when you're advertising in a lot of platforms, they will tell you, give out the most important message in the first 3 seconds or in the first 1 second. And that's not what we do at Spotify. The reason is if we look at the data, we know people, when an ad comes up, people keep listening because they know their song, the music that they're listening to will come back later. So we say no one's touching any dials, no one's changing any channels. So you can take your time when you want to deliver your message. So if we go back to this BBC spot, you can see that we have like 20, 25 seconds of audio just to get the audience intrigued. And then Sir Richard Attenborough comes in and say like, hey, come watch my show. So this is a very interesting aspect, being a former creative director in an agency and being tired of having to re-edit TV or re-editing creatives because of this. I like the idea of like first involving my audience and then only giving my message. So the next tip that we have for you is disrupt, don't interrupt. Consider that people are listening to music or listening to their podcast and they are in a specific mood, and you can know what their mood is and what the moment is, and then create something that matches that mood. So if you're talking to people who are listening to a party playlist, you probably don't want to serve a very serious documentary style ad because you just want to keep the mood going. And we have this super cool experience that was done in Australia using ASMR. I don't know if you know what ASMR is, but it stands for Audio Sensory Meridian Response. So it's basically using 3D audio and using specific audios created to trigger a response. You feel like a tingle. Some people feel a tingle, some people feel nothing, and some people kind of hate it. But the way Schweppes did this is just like they just use the sound of opening the product and serving the product using this ASMR technique. And they served this ad to people who were listening to ASMR Sleep Sounds playlist. So these were people, they were just serving this to people who are trying to relax and chill, and they just followed the mood. And I'm gonna play now, and I hope you're not one of the people who hate this.
Immerse yourself in Schwepperessence. Have you experienced Schwepperessence?
Did you experience this Schwepperessence? So this was, the Schwepperessence is a campaign that Schweppes has been using for a long time, but they were mostly focusing on TV and display. But we feel that audio is the true creative format that can deliver this. So I love this ad. Moving forward, play to their interested. This is very common for you if you're a marketer. But if you're talking to someone about something that they like, they have a lot more time than if you're just disrupting or interrupting them with something that they don't care about. So for example, we created this ad for the British Tennis Association, just inviting people to play tennis in Liverpool. And the way we did this, we used 3D sound, tennis sounds, and created like a 3D soundtrack. So you're talking to someone who enjoys tennis, for example, my dad might be watching, this will work really well.
Ready?
Come on.
Out!
In. Out. In.
30, 15, 30 all.
Out. Game.
Set.
Match.
The season has started. Pick up your racket and go hit it. Search tennis in Liverpool.
Out!
One thing I like about this ad is that if you look at the call to action, it's very specific. Like the season started, pick up a racket and go play, search tennis in Liverpool. And this could be a 30-second ad just talking about tennis. So you could have a lot of words just talking about how tennis is starting, the sun is out, but what they chose to do, and we thought was a really smart way of doing it, is just using those sounds and serving this to people who like tennis already. So we feel like this is the best way of using sound. Create and curate culture. So this is something that's really interesting. We say that when something happens in the real world, we hear it on Spotify. So a lot of big cultural moments, when big cultural moments happen, that has a reflection on streaming, and that's part of the streaming intelligence. And if brands are smart and they get ahead of the curve, they can use this. So I'll give you an example. This happened during the past World Cup. If you're from the UK market, you know that the English anthem for the World Cup is Three Lions. Is that It's Coming Home song that I personally hate, but they listen to it all the time. So, and this is a graph of how they listen to it. So when England is playing, in the beginning of the day, you're seeing this curve here. There's a little, just a little peak because people are going to work and then they're listening to the song as they go to work, and then it stays kind of stable. Right before the match, there's a pre-match hype, so there's a big peak, And then people are listening to it, getting excited about the match. And then when the game starts, it just completely drops off because they're not listening to Spotify when the game's playing for a good reason. And then this graph is specifically in the round of 16 when England finally won a shootout after I don't know how many decades over Colombia. And then people really listened to the song. And I was here and I can attest, it was very annoying. But they listened to it almost like 500,000 times after the game was over. So we can see how these things happen. Another example that we have, like there was an eclipse in the US a few years ago, and Total Eclipse of the Heart was streaming, like the streaming peaked wildly. And it peaked like as the eclipse moved through the country, you can see the streaming peak city to city, almost state to state in the US. The same thing happened, for example, in the World Cup in France. Their song is I Will Survive. And then you can see increases of almost like 4,000% on the song after France won those games. And they did win a lot of games, unfortunately for me. Talk of fame. So, you know, if you're a marketer, you know, you've been using celebrities and people really like having someone that they trust voicing your ads. And you could pick any celebrity to represent your brand, but the audience already has some creators and some hosts that they like, especially when you're talking about podcasts. So if you have a celebrity that you're using for your campaign, do use them because it starts building our audio identity. But we know that 52% of all listeners say they trust an ad more if it's endorsed by a creator or a host they like. So MAC, the makeup brand, did a partnership with a Spotify Originals podcast called The Receipts, which is focused on a young female audience. And then they just partner up with this podcast to promote a specific product. And this is what it sounded like.
Hey, beautiful people, it's the Receipts podcast here. It's your girl, Tolly T.
Audrey, formerly known as Ghana's Finest.
And your mamacita Milena Sanchez.
Our latest episode is brought to you by Mac.
And if you know anything about us, you know we love a beat face at all times.
Yep. And what's great about the new Mac Studio Fix Stick is that you can literally take it anywhere with you.
To the gym, to your date night or a night out.
Plus, it includes all of the shades. And I mean all of the shades. And it's perfect for all skin tones. So what are you waiting for? If you want to hear more from us, listen to our latest episode. Now, go on, click it.
We learned a lot about foundation sticks when we're doing this. And I love how if you look at using voices of people, someone that's familiar with audio, like these three ladies that do the podcast, the call to action, like go ahead, click it, is just too good. So this is a really strong advice that we have. And one last thing in this part about next practice is that we always say mobile first is audio first. So you can be truly mobile when you're staring at a screen. So we serve audio ads when we know people are not looking at the screen. So for example, this is an Adidas campaign that they did to launch the Ultra Boost. So it's a running shoe. And they did it targeted at runners. So you imagine if we're talking about like disrupt, don't interrupt, how they need to do it. They need to have a high tempo. They need to consider that runners are running, as they're listening to a running playlist, they're probably running. So you have to give them the right information at the right time. So this is what it sounded like.
These are the streets you run. This is where you find your freedom. Handbrake off, power on, feel the boost with Adidas Ultra Boost 19. Our shoe technology has evolved to the next level with more comfort and more responsiveness. So the more you put in, the more you get back. Adidas Ultra Boost 19. Click the banner now and feel the boost.
Okay. And now I'm just going to have a few slides to talk about before you hit record. So as Rak said, now is the time to get a little granular. If you've never done an audio ad before, if you're just starting doing audio ads, or especially digital audio, this is there's some very quick tips to get you started. So first of all, context and content matter. We talked about this when we talk about the tennis ad, but this is an example of someone cooking. We know that they're cooking if they're listening to a cooking playlist. So just create something that matches the moment. If you're serving something to people who are partying, just be upbeat and don't kill the vibe. And if you know what they're interested in, if they are football fans, do something about football. If they're runners, do something about running. If they're doing yoga, if they're listening to a yoga or a chill playlist, be sure not to distract them and to do something that's not in their proper mood. Second one, use your audio identity. Now, some brands that are a little more advanced in audio have started building their audio identity. And some brands, like maybe they don't even use audio that much, but they know the importance of audio identity. For example, You probably heard this before. I don't need to tell you what brand it is, but maybe it's an idea for your lunch if you're, unless you're having it now. But this is an example of a brand that worked really hard at establishing this sonic logo, as we talked about. But brand audio identity, it's not only about sonic logos like this, or Intel has the little sound, and a lot of brands are starting creating those. Anything can be part of your audio identity. So for example, it could be the type of soundtrack you use. You can use the same soundtrack for all your ads, to the point that users recognize that an ad from you came up when they hear the sound of it. Or it can even be the specific voiceover artist. I always use this example. If you're in the UK and you love Love Island, the show, you probably can identify the voice of the guy that narrates what's happening in Love Island. And to me, that's a very good example of audio identity. When you hear the guy, you know it's loveAudio, not every other reality show. So if you have that, use it and don't be shy. And we feel like this is going to be more and more and more and more important the more connected devices are popular. So you're not going to have a visual interface with people. If you're just talking to Alexa or to Google Home, you need to have this audio identity. Otherwise, it will be a lot harder to establish your brand. Communicate benefits. This is very easy to every marketer. So capture attention and drive action with mentions of exclusive, sales, or promotional codes. Be sure you tell, if you have something to say it. We just did a big campaign with Uber Eats and they wanted to promote a promotional code, a 20% discount code. So we had to be very clear about like, hey, if this is the goal, let's involve the users and make sure they listen to the code. So if you're working marketing, you know this, but it works really well in audio. Be clear and stay on message. We said people are listening on headphones, so it's not like radio where you have to shout at people. You can keep the tone very conversational, be very clear, and ideally have one single message. We know 30-second ads it might sound like a lot and sound like you have a lot of space, but it's more important to involve people, do something that's relevant to them and that they're interested, and then having the one thing that you want listeners to walk away with. It might be a promotional code, it might be click through to something else, it might be search tennis in Liverpool, or it just might be like we're launching a new running shoes, for example. And finally, include a call to action. Creative that has a direct call to action sees a 4.4 increase in footfall or click-through than those that don't. This is also clear if you ever work with display banners, you know that having a call to action improves it a lot. It can be click to experience more, it can be like use a promotional code, or it can be something like this super cool NARS campaign that was done recently by the UK team. Basically, they partnered up with a company to do this sampling using voice-activated devices. So I'm going to play the audio ad in a little bit, but basically in the end, it says like, ask your Alexa or Google Assistant to send me a sample for NARS. And then users had an audio experience where they could receive the sample at home. So I'm going to play now. It's a little risky.
Searching for that provocative look? Choose NARS. As founder and creative director Francois NARS says, be true to yourself and enhance your natural beauty. Try our audacious range of makeup with free samples sent to your home. For seductive lips, choose a NARS lipstick. Achieve naturally flushed cheeks with Orgasm Blush. And complete your look with Climax Mascara for maximum volume. To claim yours, just say to Alexa or Google Assistant, ask send me a sample for NARS.
Okay, you can try that later. And one thing that I wanted to suggest to you, if you never did audio before, Spotify has the Ad Studio. It's live now in the UK and Ireland and to be released in other markets soon, but it's basically our self-serve ad platform. So basically what we realize is that a lot of people want to try audio, but they don't know where to start because it's not as simple as creating like a post that you can use on Facebook or Twitter. But it is that simple actually. So I used to say that if you have an idea, you can create an audio ad using Ad Studios. Basically, it's a self-serve platform. You go in there, you create the ad, or you can brief them and they will write it for you. Pick your audience, customize your campaign in a matter of hours, and then watch the results in real time. Basically, they will work with a collective of professionals to create the script for you, or you can send your script. They will get a professional VO done for no extra cost. This is a very quick and it's a very non-expensive solution. The minimum spend is like very low. So I strongly recommend you try out Ad Studios because I love them. And if you're looking for more inspiration, we have this platform called Spotify for Creatives. It's spotifyforcreatives.com. the idea of the platform is to inspire people on how to be creative on Spotify. So I'm just going to scroll down a little bit. So it has some inspiration of some benchmark of cases that are out there, some creative insights, some interactive demos, and some next practices that we talked about. And you can sign up for our newsletter here that comes out every month. This is the end of my part, but before we finish, I have one last poll to run. So if you can get the poll up, how do you see your advertising budget for audio evolving in the next few years? You think it's going to have a steep increase, hashtag power of audio, you think it's going to remain the same, or you may expect a decline, we see better return on investment from other media. So I'll give you 10 seconds to vote, and then I'm going to call back my friend and the real star of the show, Rak Patel. Okay, let's see the results. Steep increase, 56%, that's great. Remain the same, 39%, and expect decline, 18 responses, 6%. That's perfect. We can close the poll, and then we can bring back Rak, so I can just discuss my race, Rak. These results were great.
Thank you, Rick. That was absolutely fantastic. Now, two things before I ask you a question, and we'll start our Q&A. So the first thing is, I know at Spotify we're huge fans of the Attenborough family, and you meant obviously David Attenborough rather than Dickie Attenborough earlier on, didn't you?
Yeah.
But that's a fantastic campaign. And the second point, look, I just really do hope that your tennis skills are better than your singing skills. Actually, I've never heard you sing, but that was beautiful.
We can work
beautiful.
On that.
Right, we're on to the Q&A. Rick, that was fantastic. Some brilliant examples there for everyone to hear and see. But let me ask you the first question. What's the most exciting challenge you see for audio?
I think that the interesting thing is that it feels like audio has been around for a long time, but I do feel like creatively we're just scratching the surface. So when innovation comes out, it triggers creativity, and then creativity triggers more innovation. So if you think about 3D audio, for example, it started out being like just mono or just using simple stereo. And then we noticed people were using headphones, so we can create 3D audio. And that gives rise to ASMR, which is a different thing. And no one could see that coming even 5 years ago. And as people get more creative with that, innovation will come in, and then we will allow people to keep going. So we're just it feels like we're in the very beginning of this. So it is exciting to be in the beginning of the journey and working with brands and working with people to just see how the future is going to go. I don't know what we're going to be talking about in 5 years.
Great. It is very exciting indeed. Right. So thank you, Rick, for that. And we're now going to do our Q&A. And Rick, please stay with us because I'm sure there'll be lots of questions for you as well. So let me pull up the questions and then we'll jump straight in. So first question is from Daniel. I'd be keen to see how I could use data to target customers. How can we use Spotify intelligence to target customers? So I'm happy to take that question. So there's multiple ways that you can actually target the fans on the platform. Firstly, through the playlists in terms of the searching. Obviously, we are able to see all the various searching that's being done by all of our fans, and therefore you can actually target by playlists, and that's a big way actually that many advertisers and brands use our platform. But then in most markets, we also work with third-party data providers as well, and you are able to get after certain types of targeting genres that you might be after from that perspective. But as mentioned, the streaming intelligence part is really critical on that front. And just not only playlists as well, but there's also mood and various others. Rick, anything you want to sort of add in there at all?
I think that's super interesting. Like we say that playlists are our guide. So if you search for playlists, you can find playlists about everything. So if you look now for playlists to wash the dishes, I'm certain you will find those. And then we can start thinking about that and just like creating our own playlist or just like knowing what people are interested in. So as Rak mentioned, playlists about baking, streaming about baking increased 120%. So we know what people are doing using that. So if you start with that, you can just makes it easier to target users.
Great. Okay, let's move on to the second question. And this is from Kanali. What is the size of the premium users versus the free Spotify users? So let me answer that one. So Kanali, as you saw earlier on, we have now 278 million fans across the full platform, both premium and on the advertising side as well. And of that, 153 million are on the advertising side, on the free platform. So it just gives you an idea that there is true scale, and that's obviously a global figure, but that is very representative across all the markets that we are in at the moment. Right, next one. Question for Rick. Here we go, Rick. How do you define these playlists? What makes a playlist a baking playlist? You sort of answered this, but I think it's a great point for you to reiterate. So yeah, what makes a playlist a baking playlist or a working from home playlist?
So there's a lot of things we know about this the songs that we play. So first of all, users, as they are creating playlists, we can use the titles of the playlist to understand that. So for example, every time I go for a run, I create a run playlist and I say like run June 24 or something. The streaming intelligence identifies that that's a running playlist, and it looks at the songs that are there and tries to understand. So are these songs like fast or slow, danceable or non-danceable, happy or not happy? So then we start learning what makes running. So when users create a baking playlist or a working from home playlist or a homeschooling playlist, as Rack mentioned, then we can start to like look at all those playlists that are created and start to understand what's behind it. What are the songs inside those playlists? What's the BPM? What's the valence in terms of like, are they happy or are they not happy? Other than that, of course, we work with a lot of editors on Spotify that know a lot about music, more than me and Rack, but maybe not more about house music than Rack. And then they create it. So they you know, like we know what chill music is and we know what's coming out in terms of cool chill music. And then we use that data combined with their human intelligence to create those playlists.
Great. Okay, we've got a question from Freak here, and that's, does this mean the Spotify API will get more open for creative lower budgets for uses, or is it all in collaboration with Spotify for brands? Now, I can take the first part of that, and then Rick, please jump in. But you saw there our self-serve platform, which has been a self-serve audio platform. We also have now launched video in the UK and the US as well. Now, in some markets, we don't have Ad Studio yet, but that obviously gives access to creatives, gives access to all brands from a perspective of actually building out your audio. And, you know, we are very supportive of how and what you actually do, sort of building that out. But Rick, do you want to sort of add a little bit on the Spotify for brands perspective?
Yeah, no, I feel like that makes total sense. Like the Ad Studio is a great solution for that. One thing that's interesting to know is that the API, by definition, it is open. So any developer can use that. And if you look at Spotify for Creatives, you'll find quite a few examples of people that use the API, like real people, humans, not brands, to create something cool. So the API is open for you to use it. The data is there. Of course, there are parameters as in every API, but you know, it's out there.
Great. Rick, another question for you. I knew you'd be popular. For sure. What equipment and software tools can we best use to record these 3D audio sounds?
That's actually a tricky question, because it's harder. It's like, it's too much for me, but like basically it's recording equipment, and it's not that different from what you record normally. If you look at ASMR, there's a lot of ASMR videos on YouTube that show how they record it, and they have a microphone that almost has like 2 different ears, and you can play around with both of them. But if you look at 3D audio, they actually create different like mixing sounds, because, you know, if you're like on your left ear or your right ear, or a little in front of you or behind you, and that's based how your ears reflect the sound for you. So the software is not different than typical audio recording software, but the recording might be a little bit different. But that's that's for our production team. So. Right, we've got 2. We'll do 2 more questions,
and then Rick, you're done. But let's start with this question: is there a minimum spend threshold for setting up ads via the self-serve ad platform? I can absolutely take that one. So it's very minimal, and it's £250 in the UK and €250 across the EMEA markets that we have the self-serve ad platform in there. And, you know, we've purposefully set it up in that way because we recognise, you know, that you as brand owners will want to sort of adapt your activity in real time. I mean, that's the whole purpose of a self-serve ad platform. So, you know, we hope that is no barrier of entry for any of you or any of your brands. And let's get to the last question. And this is from Jack. So do you think audio advertising is something that all industries would benefit from, or are there specific industries that may not see much of a result? Rick, do you want to start with that, and then I can absolutely sort of add a little bit to that too.
Yeah, of course. So we see this happening across the board. So we see like financial services, fast food, travel brands, luxury brands, video games. I don't think I've ever had a brief and say like, oh, this is not an audio specific campaign. So it's very hard for me. I wonder if you have something else, Brock, but like I see this happening in every.
It is every industry, and I think one of the things that, particularly as we've become more of an audio platform and you know, the world's leading audio platform, global leading audio platform. You know, previously I think a lot of brands thought they needed to have a music strategy in order to be on Spotify. However, you know, given the scale, given the streaming intelligence, given, you know, the fact that you can put a brand close to how someone is feeling or what someone's doing, i.e. moments, suddenly that's really opened up, you know, the opportunity for all brands in all sectors. And as you've sort of said, you know, we absolutely cater for all the industries out there for sure. And, you know, all are leaning in, and you know, we would love to have more of you, those of you on the call that haven't tried us out, to try us out. Right, Rick, star of the show, definitely star of the show. Thank you so much for joining us today. You know, if you have any, I'm sure there'll be more questions that'll be coming up. If there are any other questions, then of course we will reach out back to you. So as the set gets changed around a little bit, we'll go to my summary. We're almost there. Can you believe that we've almost been on the call for an hour, which is crazy. And thank you all for joining us today. I really do want to sort of thank you for taking the time and for being so interactive. We had a whole raft of questions there, and what we will absolutely do is come back to you as well for those of you that we weren't able to answer those questions. But I do hope you all found that incredibly useful and what you heard from Rick. Okay, so I do want to summarize, you know, so now what have you seen and heard today? Well, we've talked a lot about streaming intelligence, and streaming intelligence is the lifeblood of us at Spotify, and the team here are very keen to work with you to really illustrate how that streaming intelligence can help you when it comes to creativity, and when it can help you with your brands and what they do on our platform. You've heard a whole raft of next practices. Best practices are in the bin. It's all about next practices. And again, we really want to work closely with you so that we can really create some very impactful ways for you to use audio on our platform. And the final point is our commitment to you. You know, we will continue to innovate in this space, and, you know, look out for what we're going to be doing, not just for the rest of this year, but over the coming years, to really bring more and more innovation to the whole audio landscape. So that is it, ladies and gentlemen. Again, thank you so much for joining us today. We are very grateful for you taking the time out of your very busy schedules. So with that, thank you so much.